Call to order the meeting of the Mayor and Board of Aldermen for Tuesday, April the 2nd. The first thing that we will do is adopt the agenda. I do have a few changes. I'm going to ask you to remove number 19. And then if you will add under our consent agenda at 6C12, a resignation in environmental services. And at 22A, if you will add, consider a supplemental agreement to contract for the West Jackson Avenue pedestrian signals. And you've got memos for those in front of you. Is that all, Ashley?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so with that one removal and two additions, could I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? A quick mayor's report tonight because we've got a long agenda, but we are more than halfway through our legislative session. So I'm spending a lot of time in Jackson right now requesting funds for our growing community. We're a community of 28,000 taxpayers that grows to about 60 or 70,000 every day and a couple of 100,000 on the weekends. It's hard to make those numbers work without help from Jackson. So we continue to go and talk about the economic driver that Oxford is for the north half of the state and to seek funding. We've got quite a few big weekends coming up that will certainly help us sales tax revenue wise. We have baseball weekends, tournaments at M-Trade Park, a Morgan Wallen concert, and double decker. So kind of like a football season in April. So we are excited to see what the next month brings. I'll ask the board to authorize the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on March 19th and the recess meeting on March 25th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I ask you to authorize the approval of accounts for all city departments.
Move to pay the bills.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I ask you to consider the consent agenda with the one addition.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll ask the board for permission to approve a sales parameter resolution and preliminary official statement for the proposed sale of revenue bonds to fund the water upgrades for Pumpkin Water. Sue?
Thank you, Mayor and
Welcome.
Board. So back in May of 22, this board approved an intent resolution to issue revenue bonds that are paid from the water sewer revenues for costs associated with the Pumpkin Water System. The city's now ready to go forward with that. This resolution authorizes the city to proceed with the sale of those bonds. They'll be in the amount of $4 million. This resolution also approves the documentation for that, a notice of bond sale, a bid form, and a preliminary official statement, and sets the date of the sale for May 7th. So we will, Mr. Pittman and I will send out those documents to potential purchasers of the bonds, and we'll come back at your May 7th board meeting with the bids from those purchasers, and you will award that bid at that time. And so we'll close by late May, probably.
Okay. You may have any questions for Sue?
No.
If not, could I have a motion to grant permission to approve the sale of those?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. All right, Seth Gaines is here to give us our annual OPC update, and like everything else in Oxford, they are hopping, to say the least, huh?
We are. So included in this month's packet that we sent to y'all was the quarterly report, first quarter of the year, which was obviously last October to December. Had this to my board in January for them to vote on February. We did not have a full board on February meeting, so I held it over to March. So that's why we're just now getting here to do this. I'm certainly going to focus most of my time here talking about the yearly report, but if you have anything we want to go back on the year and the quarterly, I'll be certain to do that as well. So kind of going through, hitting some highlights here just to kind of tell y'all, one of our new events this year we have was Superhero Night. We had 100, didn't really know on some of these new events how things go. We had 100 packages ordered to be able to kids to become their superheroes. They come in, went through a series of events, and by the end of the night, we had about 100 new superheroes in Oxford. So police department, you are welcome to have some new superheroes around town helping you out. So Facility rentals, this past year, there was a total of 383 facility rentals. With that, we do have them broken down in different places if y'all want to know any more of them, but this obviously in the report. So 383 rentals between pavilions and facilities, ball fields, indoor facilities at Stone there. Another new program that we had this year was our Junior NBA Skills Challenge, which is like our punt, pass, and kick, or our pitch, hit, and run. We just did a Junior NBA Skills. We did that for basketball. More information, a little bit about that in a minute. 13,037 participants in the LLO program this year as far as coming in the class. So certainly we are trying to find more and more classes and more opportunities for them to get involved, and really trying to pass along some sports programs for them. They're just not really keen on getting out and playing some beach ball, volleyball, or things like that. It just hasn't come in. So one of the biggest changes that I thought benefited a lot of parents was our summer day camp program. With the schools changing their school calendar, it left a couple of open weeks. So we added 2 weeks to our day camp series this past year. In doing that, we also turned around and allowed parents to be able to play. We used to, ever since I was been here, you would pay monthly, so you'd pay for the month. With us being so big and knowing and getting a true number, we allowed parents to be able to pay for the week. So if they already knew they had a vacation planned or something, we wasn't asking them to pay their time there. So that made a pretty big change with parents, and we had a lot of good feedback when we were talking with them. So we're obviously carrying that on again this year. School calendar's a little bit different, so there's only 9 weeks this summer to be able to do that, so we're offering 9 weeks in 2024. New programs that we had this past year, there was at least 7 new programs that we offered this year than we offered the year before. Anything from adaptive chair yoga to events such as Superhero Training Day, a Mother's Day event, some deep water aerobics at the pool. So that was last year. And this year, there's at least 9 more programs that we're bringing on board this year to do that. So kind of looking at last year's numbers, you know, Mayor, last year, remember I walked in and I said this big elaborate number of 31,138 as far as registrations and people being involved. This past year was 36,853. Wow. So just numbers, that's measurables from people who have registered for a class or have attended an LLO class within that. So that's where those numbers
That's amazing, Seth.
reach. Our social reach, which we do, you talked about just a minute ago, there's 28,000 people in the town, roughly. So our social reach, when we go out between our newsletter and our social reaches, 24,000 people. So when we send out any information, it's going out to at least 24,000 different places on there. So that's some of the big numbers. I will say some of the new things that y'all will see coming out this year. We have added a spring youth volleyball league, a spring youth flag football league, spring youth fall cheerleading, and summer cheerleading for summer youth basketball. Our minis program, which is our little kids who are too small to really come into our regular programs.
Right.
So we've added a mini thumpers, which is our volleyball kids. We've just had that
fun.
program, and it was 60, 70 kids in that program. I'll go back and talk about spring youth volleyball. Usually our secondary programs, so when I say secondary programs, the secondary sports season of whatever sport we're talking about is usually about a 50% return rate from our big season. So in essence, in baseball, when we have a 500, 550, we're expecting 275, 300. Well, in volleyball this past year, there was 107 people in our fall league, primary league. We had 95 sign up for our spring league. So that was nearly 100% turnover.
So you'll probably have
from that.
150 next.
Well, let's hope so. That's what we're
right.
planning for. And then, of course, as you know, we've done some staff development stuff within our house, within one of our folks back. So our fall calendar is changing this coming fall. In the past, we've played stuff concurrently, so we'd play 6 or 7, 8 weeks of soccer, then we'd play 6 or 7, 8 weeks of flag football. So what we're doing now, in order to help parents condense that time, we will be playing sports concurrently. I said concurrently earlier. So like on Monday and Tuesday nights, this fall we'll be playing soccer. Thursday nights, we'll be playing flag football or volleyball, depending on boy, girl. And then, of course, in the Wednesdays, we're playing our fall baseball, softball. What that allows, what that helps for the community, if you've got a community of your kids just play soccer, well, you know they're going to play on Monday and Tuesday only. You don't have to worry about Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and then in flag
Right.
football, you know they're going to play on one day of the week only,
that's
so
great.
you can plan.
I wish we'd thought
for
of that about 20 years ago.
Right.
Well, Mayor, in all honesty, my first year here, we sent a survey out, and you would have thought I was going to hurt a lot of people just by suggesting that we could do this. And
I understand those feelings, though.
so what it really does is now going from 14 or 16 weeks of programming in the fall. By the way we're doing this, we're going to 12 weeks of programming in the fall. So kids and parents who are getting into school the first week of August, they're going to have a couple weeks to get settled into school before we're actually playing games.
That's good.
So they'll still be practicing. We can't stop that. You know, we have to have that. But so the only time of the year that we don't have active team sports anymore is from Thanksgiving to New Year's. You know, another busy time for every family in the town to be able to do that. Lacrosse is back now. We mentioned we have a spring season, fall season, summer of all of our different sports. We're the only place in Mississippi that has 2 seasons for every team sport that we offer. So, couple of different reasons. One, we don't have a shortage of referees. So, you know, we're able to tell a referee, if you want to stay with us all year long, we can keep you employed through our assigner year round. So you don't go work at a restaurant in Oxford all year, and then all of a sudden, 6 weeks out, you try to just do a separate sport. So we keep them busy enough all year round. So we've also this past year made an effort to really cut down on roster sizes for our individual sports, and what that does is allow each kid to be able to play more. You know, so there's not as many subs, there's not as many. So sometimes you may come out to a ball field and there may be only 7, 8 kids on a team, but we're not forfeiting, but it just means every kid gets to play a little bit more.
And parents have appreciated that, so.
Well,
I mean, I really overheard parents talking about that. Their kids get to play more.
hopefully. And so, Mayor, I'll go back to allude to something you had a little bit in your report about busy teams and stuff. So, had some time talking with Brad and stuff today. So just this coming weekend, between Brad has a soccer tournament and a baseball tournament, we have a collegiate tennis tournament at FNC, and we also have an AAU basketball tournament. So this weekend, we're looking at least 260 teams in Oxford. So,
Man. So all the questions that we get on social media about, it's not a football game, what's going on in Oxford? That.
well,
that and 2 big weddings and, you know.
Well, I don't know anything about weddings,
Just be SEC
so-
sports to fill up the town.
yeah, so if we just take, you know, just basically, if we say 12 players a team, which I think is pretty conservative on that, that's 3,120 active players this weekend, of course, not including
The parents and the siblings and the
2.5
grandparents
people per,
and-
that's right.
yeah.
So, Mayor, I know something is dear to you, as coming through the tourism department. This past year, we had started keeping up some of them. I'm not perfect on this because I know we missed some, but just between the tennis tournaments, and we did a wrestling tournament this year, we did a bunch of pickleball tournaments that I don't have records of, but just that, we did an economic contribution report, which obviously is just
Great.
direct spending in here, of $412,376 this past year. So, I'm happy to talk about any more, but that's just, we are having the Mississippi Association of Health, Physical Ed, Recreation, and Dance Conference. We've got that on our site this year. And of course, MHSA Tennis will be coming back here in 2 or 3 weeks with about 600 players on that. So we try to keep you busy.
Well, you have done well. I think that is about as successful of a report as you could get from a park commission anywhere. So I said thank you to you and your staff for all the hard work you're doing and the partnerships across the city with M-Trade Park and with other departments. And that's not even mentioning the things that they've helped us do for staff development and different things like that. So thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
We enjoy
And
it.
please tell your board the same.
I will do that. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Seth. All right. First reading of a proposed ordinance amending Chapter 102 to add Article 22, non-consensual trespass towing. So before you start, Chief, I want to kind of inform the public of why we started considering this in the first place. I think there were questions about how did this get on the radar and why are we considering it. And to paint the picture, I'm just going to read some excerpts from some emails that I've received, which I receive very often. My son is a junior at Ole Miss. We've encountered a possible fraudulent situation with 2 businesses in town, and I'm asking for your advice and/or assistance. He rents an apartment at which, if you're not familiar with it, it's an apartment complex that markets itself as a residence tailored for college students. My son left for winter break back home to the Northeast on December the 9th and returned to Oxford on Saturday the 20th of January. He arrived to his apartment complex and was unable to find his car. First, thought it was stolen, but then someone recommended calling a towing company that is frequently seen around the complex. Sure enough, his car had been towed over the break. My son called the towing company. They confirmed that they had in fact had his car since January 3rd. They informed him of the charges that were accrued since they had had his car for 17 days and said that his car was towed from the property because it had a flat tire. They had started the title search proceedings due to it possibly being an abandoned car, and were going to start proceedings to sell the car as well. To make a long story shorter, the total charges to get his car back were $1,900, only payable in cash. Being that it was a Saturday evening and he just returned from break, there was no possible way that he could come up with that amount of cash on such short notice. The next day was Sunday. The banks were closed. We didn't want to attempt to remove that amount of cash from an ATM machine, so he had to wait until Monday until banks were open to get his car with cash. The charges would continue to accrue each additional day. As of this morning, we owe $1,997 in cash. The whole situation reeks of a scam and fraud. The apartment complex allows the tow truck company to come in on a daily basis and at the discretion of the tow truck driver decide if a vehicle needs to be towed. This is a conflict of interest. The woman at the tow truck company stated that, quote, the property does not want the place to look tacky, end quote. My son's car is a late model Jeep Grand Cherokee. It did not have a flat tire when he left for break. How do we know that the tow truck drive didn't flatten the tire? My son said that the tow truck is in the complex almost daily towing vehicles. This feels like a massive moneymaker scam for somebody. The fact that a tow truck can come into the property where my son lives and pays rent, decide to tow his car and charge an incredible amount of money to get it back, and start proceedings to check title and possibly sell his car is outrageous. The apartment complex markets to the college. They certainly know that the students were on break. Any advice or assistance would be appreciated. I wanted to let you know of a situation that we experienced on Thursday, October 4th, just off the square. I was in town to take my twin boys to dinner, who were freshmen at Ole Miss. We parked in an area behind a restaurant, which is very poorly lit and a space not marked reserved. We noticed a few spaces that were marked reserved, but most were not. Of course, we were able to witness our vehicle being towed away while we ate. A second family also had their car towed at the same time. As the truck brought my vehicle back and I paid the fee of $250 in cash, they included the overnight fee, even though the vehicle was never even taken off the back of the tow truck. 2 more vehicles were being removed. I understand towing from a restricted area, but these spaces are not clearly marked. The sign is across from the drive, mounted on the back of a building in an unlit location. This feels and looks like a trap for quick cash. Several staff from the restaurant came out to let us know how sorry they were and that it's a real problem for their business. This cannot be good for business and the experience of people visiting your gray town. I hope you have the means to correct this issue. The tow truck driver told me that he hooked 10 to 12 cars on a Thursday night from this area. That's $2,500 cash. This is not good for the visitors, the businesses, or the city of Oxford. I'm writing today on behalf of multiple parties to include students of the University of Mississippi, parents of students at the university, as well as additional members of the community who have been impacted by tow company and these following apartment complexes. My son's car was towed at approximately 10:30 p.m. He was parked in what he believed to be a guest space, as indicated by the signage directly in front of where he was parked. We understand now that he should have obtained a guest pass from the complex or the individuals he was visiting, so he was clearly at fault for the infraction. I'm not looking to argue that fact. I would, however, like to bring to your attention a few issues which seem to plague many residents of Oxford in association with the above referenced businesses, in the hopes that they can be addressed. Issue 1 is in relation to the towing fee. The tow fee itself appears to be $275 cash only, with an added charge of $45 per day for storage. This tow fee seems high considering I've been able to locate other cities within the state of Mississippi that have adopted ordinances imposing a maximum rate for trespass towing such as these, and they give examples. And they also noted that in 2021, the city of Oxford entered into a towing rotation agreement with several companies. The fees listed at $200 a day, $200 and a daily storage fee of $30 with a 24-hour grace period. Issue 2 is regarding predatory towing and kickbacks from the towing company or at least 3 apartment complexes. It's come to my attention that the apartments all have contracts. I was told by an anonymous source who was a prior property manager at one of the complexes who maintained a contract with this towing company that the tow company provides a kickback to each complex and property manager that contracts with them for towing the residents and residents' guests. I'm hoping you can point me in the right direction to help resolve some of the issues that Ole Miss parents have. I'm certain that you know of these issues. This issue revolves around apartment complex towing issues. For me, it started when my daughter's friend was towed in October. Since her parents aren't active in her life, she reached out to me for help. My daughter's friend did everything right. She was parked in a guest spot, had a guest pass. The pass was hanging from her mirror, and yet she was still towed by the towing company. It was $360 cash only, which seems to be a thing with these companies, despite the person acknowledging to me over the phone that there was a pass hanging from the mirror and that it was visible from the window. His reasoning, since his record came out, she had to pay the fee despite the fact that the car had proper guest pass visible. This isn't the only case of these tow companies preying on students. There are so many parents in the same situation with their kids that have proper documents on the car, have parked in spots that were not marked either visitor or guest, and are being towed. I hope the message I'm reaching out to you today as a student and a concerned member of the Oxford community. There's a pressing issue that's been causing significant distress among the student population. Concerns of practices of a local towing company. Many of us have experienced or know someone who has fallen victim to this towing company's after-hour towing operations. The financial burden imposed by their fee structure is nothing short of exorbitant. If you're on the scene as it happens, they demand $160 in cash. But if your vehicle is in their possession past midnight, the cost jumps to an astounding $343 in cash. For students who are managing tight budgets, these amounts are prohibitive, and the cash-only policy adds to the stress. The situation is made even more difficult by the demeanor of the staff at the towing company. Any attempt to discuss the matter or express frustration is met with rudeness, and standing up for ourselves only seems to increase the price further. I'm writing to you, Mayor Tannehill, to urgently request your intervention in this matter. We need your help to investigate these practices that seem to be disproportionately targeting and affecting the student community. And there are many more where those come from. So that's why we started looking into this. So Chief, I'll let you go through.
So starting in section 102-700, under definitions, the following words, terms, phrases, when used in this article shall have the meanings ascribed to them in the section, except where the context clearly indicates a different meaning. 1, light-duty vehicle means a motor vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating of 15,000 pounds or less. 2, light-duty towing is defined as the towing, transport, and recovery of motor vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating of 15,000 pounds or less. 3, persons means a natural person, partnership, corporation, association, organization, trust, or other entity. 4, private property means all property privately owned regardless of whether the property is open to the public. 5, public property, as used in this article, excludes property owned, maintained, or otherwise under the control of the city of Oxford, Mississippi, in addition to a law enforcement officer, owner of a motor vehicle, and or duly authorized driver of said vehicle can provide explicit authorization to tow said vehicle by towing service from such property. 6, tow means to haul, carry, pull along, or otherwise transport or remove a motor vehicle by means of another vehicle. 7, towing service includes a person or other entity, whether licensed or not, that engages in or who owns or operates a business which engages in whole or in part in the towing or removal of motor vehicles for compensation. 8 is trespass towing, means the towing of removal of a vehicle without the consent of the vehicle's owner or operator that is parked in a private parking lot without the property owner or agent's consent. 9 is vehicle includes but is not limited to any motor vehicle, trailer, boat, golf cart, ATV, recreational vehicle, and or other type of vessel. Section 102 is towing of trespass vehicles for compensation. No towing service shall conduct a trespass tow of a light-duty vehicle from a private parking lot for compensation where the point of origin of the tow is within the jurisdictional limits of the city of Oxford without complying with the provisions of this article. Section 102.702, authorization required. No motor vehicle shall be towed by a towing service from a public street or way, public alley, or other public property except pursuant to explicit authorization from a law enforcement officer, owner of said vehicle, or duly authorized driver of said vehicle. It shall be unlawful for any towing service to make a payment of any kind to any law enforcement officer in return for authorization to tow a vehicle. 2, before a towing service may remove an unauthorized or trespass vehicle from the private property, the towing service must first obtain a request authorization from the property owner, the property owner's employee, or the lessee of the property to remove the vehicle in question. This prompted request shall be made on a certain date and time and is specific to an individual vehicle or vehicles in violation during that specific date and time. Any and all additional vehicles parked in violation on a future date or other time require separate request authorization by the property owner, the property owner's employee, or the lessee of the property. 3, in addition to the tow company maintaining a record of who authorized each tow, the property owner shall also maintain records of every vehicle towed from their property. The records for the tow service and the private property owner should include for each vehicle towed the date, time, description of the vehicle, to include year, make, model, color, license plate, and vehicle identification number, the name of the person requesting authorization of the tow, and the name of the tow company that performed the tow. 4, the tow service records and the private property owner's records shall be made available for inspection and compliance by the Oxford Police Department upon request. The records shall be retained for at least 3 years. 5, it shall be unlawful for any tow service to make a payment of any kind to any property owner, lessee, or owner's authorized agent in return for permission to tow any vehicle. 6, the provisions of this article shall not apply to law enforcement, firefighters, rescue squad, ambulance, or other emergency vehicles or equipment that are marked as such or the property owned by any government entity. Section 102.703 is license required. 1, it shall be unlawful for any person to engage in the business of removing a trespass vehicle from private property by means of towing and storing such vehicles without a valid city license issued by the city clerk of Oxford, Mississippi, if the business is located within the city limits. The city of Oxford will also honor a license issued by Lafayette County, Mississippi for a business located in the county. 2, the tow company shall maintain any and all permits as required by the Mississippi Public Service Commission and the Mississippi Department of Transportation. The permit numbers must be displayed on the tow vehicle per DOT regulations. All drivers operators must have a valid and appropriate commercial driver's license and Department of Transportation card. 3, each towing company shall maintain a valid liability insurance with the company's license to do business in the state of Mississippi. 1, the required coverage is as follows. A, comprehensive auto liability insurance with the limits of not less than $750,000. B, $25,000 on-hook coverage per vehicle. C, garage keeper's liability insurance of $25,000 per location. 4, the name and telephone number of the tow service is to be permanently affixed and displayed in letters clearly visible from both sides of the vehicle. The letters for the name shall be at least 4 inches in height, and letters and numbers for the telephone shall be at least 2 inches in height. Section 102.704 is trespass towing of vehicles from private parking lots. Signs required. 1, no vehicle of any size or weight shall be towed from a private parking lot for designated parking violations unless a sign is conspicuously posted and clearly visible for all vehicle entrances and exits to the property, and at least 1 sign within 25 feet of the property's on-site business office. 2, a notice in the form of a sign structure not less than 24 inches by 24 inches in size shall be prominently placed on the private property of each access or curb cut allowing vehicular access to the property within 5 feet of the public right-of-way. If there are no curb or access barrier, signs shall be posted not less than 1 sign for each 50 feet of the frontage to the public street. 3, the notice shall clearly display the following. 1, in not less than 2-inch high letters, On a contrasting background, the words unauthorized vehicles will be towed away at the owner's expense. The words tow away zone must be included on the sign and is not less than 4 inches high in letters. 2, it is not less than 1 inch high letters on contrasting background statement indicating that the parking by unauthorized vehicles is prohibited by the use of the following phrase: private property, leased parking, no parking, parking for customers only, parking for residents only, or a similar phrase indicating that the parking is limited or otherwise restricted in parking by unauthorized vehicles is not prohibited on a 24-hour continuous basis for the days of the weeks and hours of the day during which unauthorized parking is prohibited shall be posted. 3, the sign structure containing the required notices must be permanently installed not less than 3 feet and not more than 6 feet above ground level and must be continuously maintained on the property for not less than 24 hours before the vehicle is towed and removed. 4, the notice must be provided the name, address, and current telephone number of the person or company towing or removing the vehicle. 4, posting and maintaining of the signs as outlined in this article are the responsibility of the property owner. 5, a business owner or leasee may authorize the removal of a vehicle by towing company when the vehicle is parked in such a manner that restricts the normal operation of business. 6, no company will not knowingly tow or prepare to tow a vehicle when it is occupied by a person or an animal. 7, vehicle entry for the purpose of removing the vehicle shall be allowed with reasonable care of the part of the person or company towing the vehicle. Such persons or companies shall be liable for the damage associated to the vehicle if such entry is not accordance with the standard of reasonable care. 8, the purpose of non-consensual towing only. A property owner or leasee of a residential structure is not required to post a sign in advance of removing the vehicle from the driveway, lawn, or what is commonly understood to be the yard. In addition, a sign is not required where the vehicle blocks a private entrance, exit, drive, or loading area, or where a vehicle is abandoned on private property for at least 24 hours or is disabled in such an extent that it is not capable of moving under its own power. 9, the section shall not apply to statutory parking violations such as handicap parking and fire lane parking violations, nor shall it apply to non-consensual tows directed by a code and or law enforcement officer. 10, nothing in this article shall relieve any owner or leasee property from complying with all safety and traffic codes, regulations, ordinances, and laws. Section 102.705 is impoundment or storage. In the event that the owner or person in charge of private property has authorized to seek removal of a motor vehicle from such private property, such owner or person in charge is authorized to secure a private wrecker service of his or her choice, provided that when such vehicle is removed from such private property for storage and impoundment, such storage or impoundment shall be in or upon the impoundment or storage lot within 10 miles of the city limits of the city of Oxford, Mississippi, for at least 10 days. After the passage of 10 days, the vehicle may be moved to a storage yard outside the city limits, but within Lafayette County, Mississippi. No relocating fees may be charged to the owner for this moving of the vehicle. Section 102.706, establishments of rates for trespass towing. The maximum rate for the trespass, towing, and storage for light-duty vehicles from a private parking lot when the point of origin of the tow is within the city limits shall be as follows. 1, for any light-duty vehicle, $200. 2, the storage fee shall be $30 a day. A, the company shall not charge a storage fee on a vehicle retrieved within the first 24 hours of the vehicle's tow. The owner or his or her authorized agent shall have 24 hours to claim the vehicle without a storage fee. After this 24-hour grace period, the company can charge a storage fee for all days the vehicle is in storage. B, the purpose of this section, for the purpose of this section, a day is considered to be a 24-hour period. 3, the maximum rates established above shall be a flat fee, which shall be inclusive of all towing charges. A towing charge includes any fees for A, special equipment such as but not limited to a double hookup, vehicle entry when locked, dropping transmission linkage, axle or drive shaft removal, dolly, skates, trailers, or flatbed, lift, go jacks, removing bumpers, airing up brakes, and mileage. B, the time on the scene of the tow. C, time spent releasing the vehicle to the owner or authorized agent. 4, there shall be no additional charges for locating the vehicle in the storage facility, removal of items from the vehicle, or for any other similar activity which does not require towing or moving of the vehicle during business hours. 5, there shall be no additional fees for weekends and holidays. 6, no fee other than the above enumerated fees for towing and storage shall be assessed as a condition for the release of a light-duty vehicle to the vehicle owner or authorized agent. 7, vehicles unpaid or not released that remains in storage will only have an owner's personal effects released to the owner or his or her designee, prescriptions, eyeglasses, medical equipment, tools, house keys, etc. All property physically attached to the vehicle remains as part of the vehicle. 2, the towing service shall accept the following methods of payment for such fees and charges: 1, United States currency, and 2, a major credit or debit card. Section 102-707, return of light-duty vehicle to owner prior to a trespass tow. No vehicle may be towed by any person from the private property if the owner or other person entitled to possession of the vehicle is present or arrives at the scene prior to the vehicle's removal for such private property, exhibits the ignition keys of said vehicle, and offers to remove such vehicle voluntarily prior to time of such person attempting to tow actually remove such vehicle from the private property in question, provided that such other person removes the vehicle immediately. No fee may be charged to the vehicle owner or other persons entitled to possession of the vehicle except where any piece of equipment involved in the towing process has been affixed to the vehicle prior to the arrival of the person, in which case a fee not to exceed $100 may be charged. If the owner or person in control of the vehicle does pay the required fee, a signed detailed receipt must be given to the person redeeming the vehicle. 2, if the owner or person in control of the vehicle does not pay the required fee, the company may continue to tow the removal of the vehicle. 3, the towing service may not block the requested vehicle to be towed upon arrival to the private property in an effort to keep the owner or other person entitled to possession of the vehicle from removing said vehicle before any piece of equipment involved in the towing process can be affixed to the vehicle. Section 102-708, return of light-duty vehicle to owner after trespass tow. 1, the owner or authorized agent of the owner of the towed vehicle shall be identified by a valid driver's license and or ignition key which operates the vehicle towed, or in the instance of rented vehicles, the renter may be identified by presentation of a rental contract or agreement and the driver's license of the renting party named in the rental contract, or the rental company may be identified by presentation of the vehicle title or other documentation including the rental company and the owner is the owner of the vehicle. 2, the towing service shall immediately release a towed vehicle to the owner upon tender of the lawfully authorized fee. Failure of the towing company to release the vehicle within 45 minutes of the payment of the fees shall be in violation of this article. 1, any vehicle owner or agent shall have the right to inspect the vehicle before accepting its return, and no release or waiver of any kind which would release the person or company towing the vehicle from liability for damages noted by the owner or other legally authorized person at the time of the redemption may be required from any vehicle owner, custodian, or agent of the condition of the release of the vehicle to its owner. A detailed signed receipt showing the legal name of the company or persons towing or removing the vehicle must be given the person paying towing or storage charges at the time of the payment, whether requested or not. 3, the towing service shall provide a reason for the vehicle being towed. 4, hours of release of vehicles. The towing company office must be available for business release of vehicles 7 days a week and staffed by a company employee during normal business hours 8 to 5 Monday through Friday. The office must be available so towed vehicles can be released and picked up from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday, Sunday, and all holidays. 1, during a University of Mississippi home football game, the office must be staffed from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 5, private property towing, storage rates, and hours shall be posted in a conspicuous place visible to the customers at the tow service company's location. Section 102-709, trespass towing notice to police required. 1, any towing service operating within the city shall within 1 hour report to the local law enforcement agency having jurisdiction any vehicle that has been towed unless the vehicle was towed at the request of the owner of the vehicle. 2, they shall notify the Oxford Police Department of the towing, the trespass location, and person authorizing tow, the storage site, the time the vehicle was towed or removed, and the make, model, year, color, vehicle identification number, and license plate of the vehicle. Section 102.710, enforcement. 1, this article shall be enforced by the chief of police or an authorized designee. 2, the chief of police or his or her designee shall have the power and authority, subject to the law, to enter upon the wrecker storage premises to ascertain whether the premises are in compliance with this article. 3, any person who desires to register a complaint under this article may initiate enforcement within the police department. Section 102.711, violations and penalties. 1, any violations of the provisions of this article or failure to comply with any of its requirements shall subject the offender to a misdemeanor, which may be punishable by the following fines and penalties. 1, a fine not less than $250 and not more than $1,000, and or sentenced to serve up to 6 months in the county jail for a first offense. 2, a fine not less than $500 and not more than $1,000, or to be sentenced to serve up to 6 months in the county jail for a second violation within 1 year. 3, a fine not less than $1,000 or sentenced to serve up to 6 months in the county jail for the third and 4 subsequent violations within 1 year. 4, notwithstanding the above, the judge may order restitution to refund the owner of the towed vehicle for any and all costs, charges incurred if applicable. 2, any violation of this article shall be considered a separate and distinct violation.
All right, thank you, Chief. That was a lot. So this is a first reading, and does the board have any questions or comments related to the ordinance just read?
I just have 2. 1 is on section 102.703B with the required coverage on $25,000 for a hooked vehicle. You think that's enough? I mean, there's cost of vehicles are skyrocketing.
Well, you do have where they've got $750,000 of their total coverage.
That's the state minimum, it's 25.
Okay.
Which is consistent with what we have.
Okay. And then on the size of the sign, you think we can make that a maximum of the 24 by 24? You think they can get all that information?
I think that's the discussion that we're looking at with planning to make sure, 1, we stay within regulation and what can we get on there. So that's still an open discussion.
Okay. I mean, because right now it's kind of an open book. It says a minimum of 24 by 24. I don't want to see a billboard as you go into the
Yes, sir.
conflicts. That's the only ones I had.
All right, any other comments or questions?
I have a quick question, just real quick.
Okay.
On section 102.711, violations and penalties, some of the wording was a little different on ours, but not much. But this one, is it and or sentence? So like they pay and or sentence, or just pay or sentence? Each one. Is it and or?
So really it'd be up to the judge, so he could impose, he could impose a financial penalty, and then he could also impose jail time. That's really up to him.
Okay.
So it
So
could
it's
be,
and or.
yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
got it. Okay.
And these maximums are within the state law for misdemeanors. In municipal, there's only so much a city can do for misdemeanors.
All right, so this is a first reading. At our next board meeting, we'll have a second reading of this proposed ordinance and a public hearing. Thank you, Chief. Request permission to approve and authorize the mayor to sign an interlocal agreement with the University of Mississippi and Lafayette County for joint law enforcement activities.
Yes, ma'am. This is a discussion that we've been involved with Pope and the university's legal team to discuss with them leasing property within the city to make sure we're all correlating with who has jurisdiction, how we handle calls. We've reviewed this. We are good with this document. I think it puts us both in a best practice position.
All right. Does anybody have any questions regarding that interlocal agreement?
You go with this, Pope?
Yeah, I've looked over it, I'm fine with it, and there is a statute that was only passed in the last 6 or 7 years And so this is modeled sort of by USM and maybe Delta State. There's a couple of universities that have adopted a similar agreement, and it allows the university basically to go more than 500 feet off of their campus, and that covers a lot of their apartment complex. And you know, they now police those streets, but it also still allows us to respond in conditions that the chief thought was important. If somebody makes a motion to accept, make the motion dependent upon the county noting its proper county officials signing the document. This may need to be updated with a different board president than the one that the university sent to us. And I don't want that to come back with a signature change.
Right.
I'll make that motion with the new supervisory board signature.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Request permission to approve a restaurant consumption brown bag permit for Good Day Cafe. Chief?
Yes, ma'am, we have reached out to the owner and operators. We feel confident that they understand the law, and we have no issue.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Request permission to approve a parade assembly permit for the Pregnancy Center of Oxford to host a 5K on November the 16th from 8 a.m. until 11 a.m.
Yes, ma'am, we're good with this. We can handle it. No issues on our end.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Request permission to approve a parade assembly permit for Stronger Together Oxford to host a community volunteer recognition in the City Hall Pocket Park on April 22nd from 2 until 5 p.m.
Yes, ma'am, we're good with this one.
Move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Request permission for an off-duty uniformed officer to work a security detail on May 25th from 4 p.m. until 10:30 p.m.
Yes, ma'am, this will be for a wedding, and they just wanted a marked unit out. So we're bringing this in front of you guys to be able to use that equipment.
Okay?
Inside the city limits.
Yes, sir.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consider an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial of case 3058B, a special exception as provided in section 3.5.1.2.c, dwellings detached by SMJ Enterprise LLC, Scott Gill, for property located at Harlan Drive, being further identified as PPIN 18837. Robert?
All right. The appeal of the noted special exception to allow for 4-bedroom detached units in a development of more than 5 units in a neighborhood residential district is being heard at the request of the applicant, SMJ Enterprise LLC. This request was the second of 2 requests heard with the same item, the other being a variance to the 50-foot buffer requirements to allow a northern access drive out of the property. The hearing for this request was held at the Monday, March 11th Planning Commission meeting with 5 of the 7 commission members present. Chairman Rigby called for a motion on this portion of the request, and after not receiving a motion by any other members of the commission, Chairman Rigby made a motion to deny the request. The motion was seconded by Commissioner Alexander, and the motion passed unanimously, 5-0. On March 15th, staff received a request to appeal the denial of the special exception from Mr. Stuart Paval on behalf of the applicant, and a copy of the appeal letter is included in this report.
All right. Is there, who would like to present? Anybody? Stuart, here.
Hey y'all, Stuart Paval, Develop Design Studio, the architect on the job. I'm not gonna sort of go through the presentation I think that I made in the letter, so I'll just say
We've
I'm here
seen
to
it.
answer any
Just
questions.
for your knowledge, we have seen it, and
Yes.
so thank you.
Sure.
We have attached here the information from the Planning Commission as well as the information from Mr. Poval. Does anyone have questions for Mr. Poval or for Robert?
My understanding is that you have basically adding 7 bedrooms, is that correct?
That's correct. Seven bedrooms is what we're talking about.
So these 4 bedrooms, 7 of them will go from 3 to 4?
Correct.
And the detached homes will be one single-family home?
Correct. Yeah, and we're adding these in to the single-family homes, that there's also a component of this project that is attached townhouses. The need that we are seeing, and the real estate agents that are, Nixtan that is working on this is seeing, is 4-bedroom homes detached, and so we're trying to do that for the detached versus the attached, which we could have done 4-bedroom attached by right on this, but they really see the need in the detached. And so we're only adding the 7 because it's under the 25% threshold that seems to be in other places in the ordinance sort of a threshold that they like you to kind of stay under. So that's why we are doing it for 7 only. And one thing I want to note also, I know I said I wasn't going to go on and on, but I will note this, that in talking with Nixtan, what they're seeing overwhelmingly is that on these single-family for sale products, that it is for sale. It's not rental, and they are seeing these generally going to end user. It's not investor. It's not someone buying up a bunch for rentals. Like, these are end user people buying these homes to live in them. So even with these 7 additional bedrooms, we're not necessarily talking about 7 additional cars, which I think was, of the few comments that were made on this in the commission hearing, it was about how many more cars are we adding, and I think it's a good point to make that we're not really talking about 7 more cars necessarily.
So the footprint doesn't change of each individual unit, it just changes within it, like
Correct.
restructuring?
That's right, yeah. The units are designed so that it's in the 3-bedroom, it's attic space, in the 4-bedroom, we're adding a bedroom, yeah.
But you can't guarantee that they won't be rentals.
That's
You're
correct.
telling me they're gonna be residences, it's individually owned, but you can't guarantee.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be
Just
guaranteed.
like I can't guarantee that they will be rentals.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's true, it can't be guaranteed. I'm just saying that the data we're getting from real estate agents are that these sales at this price point are generally not going to investor rentals. Yeah, but you're right, there's no guarantees in life.
I just want to make sure that you don't add a bedroom and then somebody comes in and splits it, sells 2-bedroom apartments, for lack of a better term, but I understand the design is not going to be capable of that.
No, not in any way, no.
All right. Any other questions? All right, what is your pleasure? Considering an appeal of the Planning Commission's denial, so I'll need a motion to overturn their denial.
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a second? All right, the motion dies for lack of a second.
All right.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank y'all.
All right, consider a request from the University of Mississippi for modifications to Old Taylor Road for the proposed Oxford University Stadium expansion project. Come on up. Hello.
Hello again. So, I'm Virginia Pence, the Assistant University Architect. Thank you for your time again.
Absolutely.
We are putting forward a revised design based on your thoughtful feedback at our last visit.
can you pull your mic down?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. And I think Ben will put the exhibits up. Okay. Hopefully you do. So we took the feedback to heart and revised the hardscape of the proposed design to pull the sidewalk out of the parallel parking spot. So we are retaining all but one parallel parking spot, and we're respectfully requesting to decommission that one spot to permit a crosswalk. We're going to try to restripe a few of the pieces of the existing parking lot so that we can have a couple more ADA spots and use this as an accessible crosswalk for our day-to-day use. So we will have a sidewalk on the entire east side from the current ramp project straight up to the music hall. So you will now have safe passage on this particular road from the major use points.
Well, and you addressed our concerns of eliminating parking. I think we can live with one spot to make a pedestrian crossway much more safe. You have eliminated our concern of not being able to widen the road in the future, and so I thank y'all for being good partners in helping us find a solution that kind of meets both of our needs. Very much appreciated. Does anyone on the board have questions?
We already did the
We
equipment.
already did the crane.
We already did the crane.
I mean, this basically
Yes,
addresses
this
the
is
concerns
just
of
the,
the right of
yeah,
way.
and they
Sure.
addressed, I think, all of the concerns
I'm
that
with
we
you.
raised.
I'm with you. Thank you.
All
I
right.
appreciate you showing all three options too, of the parking, the turn lane,
Yeah.
maintaining parking, and then the potential expansion. It shows that it's all possible in the future. I appreciate that.
So we'll take a motion from the board to grant them their request to make these modifications to Old Taylor Road.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank y'all
Thank
very
you so
much.
much.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. Request permission to approve a final plat amendment for case 3055 Capstone Development LLC McMonty for the Lamar Phase 4A for property located at 127 Cincinnatus Boulevard, being further identified as PPIN 41084. Ben?
Thank you. Not long ago, maybe at the last meeting, we had a case for the, I guess that's the old Lamar Lounge, where it was a two-lot subdivision. We removed one lot from it. This is the rear portion of that property that was being incorporated into the Lamar, and as such, it will, it's incorporated and will create lots 103 through 106 on the site. It is about 0.41 acres. This went before the Planning Commission. They unanimously approved or recommended approval of this plat amendment. Engineering provided a series of comments, and there were 3 conditions of approval, which have all have been satisfied.
Motion made with conditions.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to approve a preliminary and final plat for case 3056 Brad Walsh for Gary subdivision for property located at 911 Lincoln Avenue, being further identified as PPIN 8399. Ben, I'll let you get us started.
Thank you. So the applicant is seeking the ability to subdivide, creating 4 lots from the existing 2.6 acre lot. The underlying zoning of this property is traditional suburban residential, but the site is also located in the Neighborhood Conservation Overlay District. The property features frontage on both Buchanan and Lincoln Avenues. There's one existing home on the lot that fronts Buchanan Avenue, which is the family home of the applicants and is a contributing structure in the historic district, South Lamar Historic District. Applicants seeking to create 4 lots at the rear or the south of the property, all which will front towards Lincoln Avenue. The proposed area to be divided into 4 lots measures about 0.71 acres. Well, there was a proposal that came before the Planning Commission in November of '22, and that item was tabled to allow time for consideration with tree mitigation and a stormwater plan, and so that has been incorporated into this request. In addition to that, the applicant did appear before the tree board in April of 2023. It is of note that there is a historic tree on the neighboring property at 904 South 11th Street, and the tree board, after discussion, did grant the applicants the ability to work within the drip line of that historic tree should this subdivision be approved. The proposed lots, they do vary in size. They're about 0.17 to 0.18 acres. The lots are required to measure 7,500 square feet according to the traditional suburban residential district. And each lot measures about, as proposed, 71.5 feet of frontage, while the rear lot lines range from 68 to 72 feet. The applicant notes that the stormwater will be addressed on an individual basis as the buildings are proposed for construction. It's unique for us to have subdivisions inside the core of Oxford. Most of the core is already built out, although we do see from time to time some larger areas that remain subdivided, and so that's what we see here. But being that this property is located in the Conservation Overlay District, as noted in that provision of the Land Development Code. It encompasses Oxford's distinctive older neighborhoods and commercial areas which contribute significantly to the overall character and identity of the community. And it's meant to address the following goals: to protect and strengthen desirable and distinctive physical features, design characteristics, and the unique identity, charm, and flavor of Oxford's older neighborhoods. To protect and enhance the livability of the street, strengthening civic pride, to promote new compatible development and prevent blighting influences and reduce conflict caused by insensitive and incompatible development, to promote and retain affordable housing, and to encourage development design that builds connectivity to adjacent developments and the surrounding community and makes a positive contribution to Oxford's evolving cityscape. Additionally, one of the factors in, as laid out in section 9.2.10.2G of the Land Development Code, that states that the general site arrangement, amenities, and convenience with particular reference to ensuring that the appearance and general layout of the proposed development will be compatible and harmonious with properties in the general area and will not be so at variance with other development in the area as to cause a substantial negative impact on such property values. And while the proposed subdivision meets the TSR underlying zoning requirements for lot size, the proposed lots are not of typical size or street frontage for Lincoln Avenue. The Conservation Overlay District is in place to ensure new developments compatible with the existing neighborhood. With a couple of exceptions along the street of Lincoln Avenue, most of the lots have 100 feet of street frontage towards Lincoln. And the board shall consider if the proposed smaller lots are appropriate in this context, if the proposed subdivision is in keeping with the character and rhythm of the existing lots on that street. Staff has held the position that the proposal should be limited to 3 lots along Lincoln, and that the remainder of the property should be included as a lot. So the primary home that's there right now, the family home, should be included as a lot also. So thus creating a 4-lot subdivision, 1 house on Lincoln, or 1 lot with the house on Lincoln, and 3 in the proposed 4-lot area. The 3 lots would then measure about 95 feet with street frontage, which would be more in keeping with the size of the existing lots on Lincoln. Engineering did provide comments related to access, sidewalk, grading, water and sewer, and stormwater. And I do just want to point out that, as noted, for this subdivision plat, specific stormwater management is being proposed. The stormwater management plan presented is generalized and to be approved, not to be approved with this plat at this time. So each lot will require site-specific stormwater management to be reviewed prior to the issuance of any permits. Staff recommended denial of this request as it was proposed. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended denial of this request with a 5-0 vote. Should the board wish to approve the requested plat, staff does request that the 6 conditions listed in the staff report be included.
All right, thank you, Ben. Does anybody have a question for Ben before Brad presents? All right, Brad?
Thank you, Ben. I'd first like to point out just how clean this request really is. The only variance that the Geary family had asked for was that we not have to put in sidewalks to nowhere. There was an original proposal that we have to put sidewalks along Lincoln, and there aren't any sidewalks on that side at all. And if you go back toward South Lamar, there aren't any sidewalks either. My point was, we'll pour you some sidewalks, but we're going to lose some trees if we do that. So that variance is out of the way. Frankly, as a developer in this town, I think that's the only variance I've ever asked for, because I know that if I go by the code and if I follow what I think the rules are, what the rules are as per the code, I pretty much ought to be able to, I guess John T. Edge's word, do what I want with my property. So within reason. So that variance is done. Ben had talked about the tree. The tree was not on our property. It's a historic tree, but we did win the tree board 4-5. We won the tree board 4-5, and I think part of what led us to win the tree board 4-5 was 30 years before 30 years before there was an Oxford Tree Board, Betty Jane Gary put a proviso in the deed to Ford Dye's property. He wasn't the one that she sold it to, but she sold it to somebody else, that said that that tree could not be cut down without her permission. So while you guys have done a great job preserving the trees in this town, I think some credit ought to be done where credit was due, where I guarantee you, you could search those land records all day long and not find a provision like that. So to say this family, or for anybody to get up here and express concern over the tree, they got about 30 years of more concern before they equal what this family has vested in that tree. Nobody wants to see the tree hurt. The tree honestly just has a very long branch or two that extend past way past the property line, but it's not on our property. So we passed the tree board, we got the variance. What we're left with is asking you for a 4-lot subdivision that meets your current code for this particular zoning, period. We're not asking for any off-street parking exceptions. We're not asking presently for any kind of lot coverage exceptions. And these are all exceptions that some of the neighbors that have written you have asked for in the past. They asked for it and we didn't oppose it. So I think on some level it's a little disingenuous for them to come and say, we've got parking problems when they asked for exceptions for their own properties, or lot coverage problems that lead to flooding when they ask for exceptions to their own properties. So this leads us to, or I'd like to get into what the planning department issues as I see them are. As I understand it, and I can have Jeff come up here, but I think Ben would admit at this point where we are with any kind of water or topographical or any of that is that we're going to have to come back to, in order to get the permitting, we're going to have to come back and get all that approved. I have told, and I think Ben would admit, I have told them we will do anything the city tells us to do drainage-wise. We don't want to cause a single problem to any of the adjacent landowners, period. There is an engineering solution that can solve this. At one point, I think one of the comments was that it was a 48-inch pipe. That actually might have been my comment, I don't remember. But we're talking about a pipe that could effectively drain Abbeville. And yet my response to that was, let's start digging. You know, if that's what you guys tell me it takes, and the engineers are all in concurrence, none of these lots are going to exacerbate any drainage problems on our watch. They're just not. Fortunately, we've also got some property to play with in the form of in the form of Buchanan. So I think that the whole water issue is a non-starter. I also think that I have some things I'd like to share with you if we were to go back down and go back to planning on that issue. I've got some things I think it would be important to bring to your attention about one of the property owners in particular, and some of what was claimed as water issues at one point, but not at another when they were attempting to sell their property. I've got those documents. So right now, I think where we are with Ben is Ben he correctly stated, I think it's subsection G, but that subsection doesn't say the property across the street. It says specifically the general area. Had you guys meant for it to be the street that it was on, then that's what you would have said. But you said the general area, because let's face it, if you drive around that area, you're going to see so many different lot sizes, narrow, big, that there is no typical lot size And to the extent, let me address to the extent that there might be one on Lincoln. Mr. Edge pointed out in his email opposing the lots that his house is one lot removed from the proposed project. But his lot's only 56 feet wide. The lot next to him, we're asking for 71. The lot next for him, and ours is within code. The lot next to him is also 56 feet wide. As to square footage, each of their lots are 25% smaller than the lots we're asking for. And these are one house removed. That certainly has to be seen as within the general area. The Rosser lot, which is straight across the street, is a lot that was originally 2 lots that was combined into one. So if you took it and split it back out to how it originally was, as the city fathers intended, or as historic commission would back me on, if you take those 2 lots and another one that's 85 feet wide, we're within average of 3 of the 10 lots on that street. Let me talk a little bit about the homes that front Lincoln. And I'm talking purely the ones that front Lincoln west of South Lamar. There are 7 on the opposite side of the street and 3 homes that would be on this same side of the street. None of the 3 on the same side of the street are homesteaded. What does that mean? Well, they're all second homes, or I think in one case it might be a rental home. But these are not your typical voters. These are folks with multiple homes that come in and they'll go to football weekends, and yeah, they see traffic on a football weekend. If they want to see traffic on a football weekend, they should go over to mine and Brian's house and try to make it just down the road at all. It doesn't happen, but this is a dead-end lot. It's not, that's one of the boogeymen is always, what are we going to do about parking in Oxford? Well, guys, I mean, parking in Oxford is a hassle 5 or 6 weekends, and by God, God bless them, because they sure bring the money into this town. And personally, I could put up with it. The other thing about parking on this particular road is I go down there, and the only people I see parking on the road are all the landscape contract companies. I mean, it's literally, the other day when I went through, there were 3 different ones, and there must have been 30 people swarming around there, but they were all contract labor going down there to rake the lawn or blow leaves. I forgot one, just around the corner from Duke Goes' house, fronting South 11th, there are 2 other 50-foot wide lots, one owned by Basil Richmond and the other owned by Curtis Wilkie. I particularly like Curtis's, because Curtis's house is the kind of house I'd like to see. I'd like to see something on a smaller scale on Lincoln. We're not going to slap these things up so that we can fill them full of people. Also, we've addressed off-street parking. Each of the plans can have off-street parking in a garage. If y'all want us to put it in there that they have to, happy to do that. I would anticipate anybody that was going to come in there would want that. So I don't think if Ms. Witherspoon or whoever says that that Lincoln gets to be a hellscape as it comes to parking, give me a traffic study. Or I'll tell you what, we'll pay for a traffic study to show you there's no real parking problem or traffic on Lincoln. It is a dead-end street. There's been some discussion by some of the objections that my mother-in-law told them one thing or the other. I don't know if any of you guys knew my mother-in-law, but I can tell you, she didn't suffer fools. She was very plain spoke, and she didn't a bit more tell anybody in the family what her plans were, just gratuitously. And she sure didn't tell them that her plan was for there not to be 4 lots on here. Her plan for the 4 lots had existed since 2008. I've got surveys on it at that point when we were trying to figure out what we were going to do when my sister-in-law's husband had a stroke and it looked like was going to need some long-term care, and how we were going to manage it all. Ms. Gary stepped in then, and I guarantee you Ms. Gary didn't go to Dennis Ford, or Dennis Ford used to live on the street. He came to me one time and said, you know what y'all ought to do? Y'all ought to have a pocket park on Lincoln. Just a little pocket park. Do a conservation easement. I'm a tax lawyer. I knew what that was. And I said, Dennis, that's a great idea. Why don't you lead the charge in raising the money and she'll match it? You know, but it just everybody on that street at one time or another has had concerns about this property. I get it. But what we're doing here is not unreasonable, and it's within y'all's code. I could go on about some of what I call fighting ghosts. Fighting ghosts is when I hear from one neighbor, oh, you're all going to do tall and skinny like Nashville. I left Nashville in 1994. The house I sold in Nashville in 1994 was $120,000. I look at it now on Zillow, it's $2.3 million. I moved here to get away from that. We need to have some sort of affordable housing. And let me tell you, 4 lots are cheaper to afford than 3. And to the extent, backing up again to what the statute itself says, the statute itself says to the extent it would negatively impact property values. Now, if any of y'all with a straight face can tell me we're not going to get top dollar for these lots right in the middle of Oxford, then I'm all ears as to how we could screw that up. It can't happen. It's not going to impact the Simmons property. It's not going to impact the Rossers property. It's not going to impact Duke's property. Again, you're likely to hear some stuff tonight about zoning or whatever. We're not asking for any of that. No variances, nothing. We're asking simply to be able to abide by the rules that you guys set up when it was clear-headed and there were no politics. We went to, this is a reasonable lot size. And again, I can have Jeff Williams, if y'all want to hear from him, talk about the water issues. I think the water issues were resolved in that when Ben first came to us, he wanted a master plan for drainage, and I said, great idea, we're all over it. We will actually develop the lots and make it. It's going to be hard on us because then we'll have to have everybody give us what their plans are, pre-sales, and it's going to be difficult. But we'll coordinate all that for the city, and I kind of get crickets back. I kind of get, nobody can tell me what the actual objection is to the drainage, other than that it's been expressed that Dr. Dye's having problems. Dr. Dye's having problems, and we hadn't turned over 1 teaspoonful of dirt yet. I hadn't put a spade in the ground, and he's having problems. So those aren't our problems right now. But we're committed to helping to the extent we can. We're committed to helping fix his problems if we know what it is. So with that, I guess the last thing I'd want to say is I've had a little bit or the family's had a little bit of a change of heart as it regards 3 versus 4. Here's the problem. If we go to 3 lots, Buchanan's going to get developed, and Buchanan's not going to be just a single lot that's going to be for everybody's park or everybody's, at this point, there are no children, unfortunately, left in that immediate neighborhood. Brian, yours might be the youngest. I don't know of any. I don't know of any of them. It has been a little bit of a dog park, which has caused my mother-in-law some consternation. But you're never going to get a young family in there if you keep on making the rules for, I think what one of my nephews said, for expats, you know, people that are here because it's a nice place to be 8 weeks of the year or 12 weeks of the year. So I guess to sum it all up, this is a long time family, and this family's been here a long time, good members of the community. They kept that thing open back when nobody else would. They allowed kids to play there back when nobody else would. But honestly, the times have changed, and all we're asking for is to be able to do what the law allows us to do.
Thank you, Brad. So I just want the public to know that we have watched as a board the Planning Commission meeting, so we are aware of all of the concerns that were voiced there. We have read and appreciate those on both sides taking the time to draft thoughtful emails and share those with us. We have read them. Those have been forwarded to our city clerk so that they can be entered into the record. But with that said, I'm happy to hear from any of the neighbors if anyone would like to speak. Ford? Okay, you can go next.
I wasn't really going to speak until my name is invoked, but I've got a video I want to share with you. I tried to send it by email, and I'm not very technically gifted, and I think it was too large. But this is South 11th Street when it rains real heavily, and I had the city come out and work on that. Like a lot of places in Oxford, we have drainage issues. Sure. The water overflows on South 11th Street, and this is the line of my yard. There's two rivers that go in the front of the Gary property that come through their property first and then on the back of mine. And at the original Planning Commission meeting, the first thing I did was get up and thank Betty Jane Gary and the family for letting our kids play there all these years. I mean, I'm really thankful for that. But my two concerns, and y'all can look at this if you want to. This is just a video. I've sent it to a couple of y'all, these numbers I have. And I tried to, but Brad Walsh has mentioned before, I did have a drainage problem at my house that I've corrected. But him acting like this drainage problem is my problem is really kind of insincere. It's our problem. It's the city's problem. It's the neighborhood's problem. The water flows out of the street and goes into their yard first and then comes on to the property in question behind my house. And the other thing, you know, the tree board, when I did my renovation on the house about 20 years ago, I got a letter from the tree board that specifically said I could do nothing under the drip line of that tree. No excavation, no landfill, nothing. And I honored that request. And the fact that the tree board talking about making exceptions to rules, he had an exception to the rule that I didn't get to, you know, not that I would want to do anything. I could have handled the drainage problem in my yard 20 years ago if I'd have put 2 feet of dirt in my entire backyard. I wouldn't have to worry about it, but I had that tree there. And I'm telling y'all, if you develop 4 properties back there and get right up to my line and put pavers, whatever you do, and there's nowhere for that water to go, it's gonna sit in my backyard. That tree is like 10 feet from the property line. And it's gonna damage that tree. And I mean, that's, I look at that as the city's tree. It's not even my tree, because, you know, but it's a very important tree. And I've done all I can to protect that tree, and I've even spent some of my own money having, you know, people work on it. But anyway, I think my main 2 concerns are the drainage issues, which are not just my problem, it's the neighborhood problem. And, you know, and one of the Gary sisters after that first meeting got in my face and said, that's your problem. Well, I don't think that's the right answer. I think it's our problem and the city's problem. And if it's not handled appropriately, and all that I asked too, if there were gonna be all those lots, you know, I think 4 lots is too many, is my personal opinion. I think there needs to be a comprehensive drainage mitigation plan, and there needs to be. And also I said the tree, and that's all I'm gonna say. I'll let somebody else come up, but anyway, thank you all for y'all's consideration. I know this is a contentious issue, but I appreciate y'all's input. Thank you.
Thank you, Ford. Come on up.
Thank you. My name is Warren Steele. I live on South Lamar. Our backyard faces South 11th, and that's just, but I was at the Planning Commission meeting, and so I just have a couple questions about this proposal. As I recall, there were going to be 3 lots on Lincoln, And then Dr. Dye had some problems with that, and the Planning Commission rejected it. Now there are four proposed lots. Are they all on Lincoln, or are any of them on Buchanan?
Mr. Steele, I think that it's always been 4 lots, and they all abut Lincoln. Somebody will jump in, and I think it's always been 4 lots, Mr. Steele, and it's always been, all of them will have the frontage on Lincoln.
All of them have the frontage on Lincoln. Okay. Not one of them is not the original Miss Gary's house.
Not one of them includes any property between the property line and Buchanan.
Okay. Okay.
And they'll jump in and correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, okay, that's, I was surprised because it seemed like they rejected 3 and now they're getting 4. But that's...
Only 4 has been the proposal the whole time. That's correct. That has been the application the whole time. That has not changed. The planning staff and planning commission expressed that they might be okay with 3, but that's not what the family has asked for.
Okay.
So that's I think the difference in numbers, but the proposal is for 4.
That's good.
All right, is there anybody else that would do? Come on up. We'll wait on you.
Thank you for letting me have a say.
Of course.
I live on the corner of South 11th and Lincoln, and so my driveway comes off of Lincoln. Lincoln is a dead-end street starting at South 11th and going west to the end of the street. If you live on that street, obviously, you've got to come in one way and go out the same way. So you effectively double the traffic rate on the street. Before the last planning commission meeting, I went down the street and I counted 22 curb cuts for vehicles on the street already there. Now, I'm not trying to express that those are 22 driveways, but there were curb cuts for vehicles to come in and go out if they chose to, and certainly the large majority of them were curb cuts for vehicles to use. If we add 4 lots to those curb cuts, you've got 26 curb cuts. It just seems to be inordinately dense for that area. If you will just consider the next street north, which is, I'm a little bit senile. What's the next street over? Hobbs Street. Anyway, the next street, Miss Gary's driveway's on.
Buchanan.
There are 4, Buchanan, thank you. There are 4 curb cuts over there, and so you have a complete different kind of density on the next street over. Obviously, this street is not as narrow as maybe some streets in Oxford could be, but it's narrow enough. But if you've got the kind of density there, you're gonna have to have fire, ambulance, other emergency vehicle participation in things from time to time. Unfortunately, that just seems to be the way life is, but they have to come in and go out the same way. They have to get their trucks in, they have to get their vehicles in, they have to get their people in the same way and go out. Now, if everybody did right and park their cars in their driveways and in their garages, that's no problem. Unfortunately, that ain't what people do. They park on the street. You know, I live on you know, my house fronts on South 11th. People park up and down South 11th and these other streets as well. And so that creates sort of a Dodge car way for emergency vehicles to get in and out if there's a need. You know, there's not a need every day, thank goodness. But from time to time, you do have to get in there to do things, and that's another problem that I think that needs to be considered at least. And the fact that we're adding 4 family residences to this street, which is a very dense street, as I said, you're just adding enough additional population, vehicle use, not just family vehicles. You know, the garbage truck has to come in there. The city has to come in there to do street work. It's just it's a place where I don't know of another place in Oxford where the population is as dense as that on a short street that has no outlet except at one end. And just it's my opinion, but that, you know, we don't need any more there. We've got as much as we can stand. It doesn't, you know, I understand Brad's position, and I sympathize with him, and I don't have any, you know, all the stuff he said is true. I don't think that they're out of compliance with the statute, but the statutes do say that these things have to be approved. They have to be, the city board or the planning commission or whoever has to look at what's being proposed, and if it complies with the ordinance, then it can be approved. It doesn't mean that it has to be approved simply because it complies with the ordinance. It simply means that it can be approved. And what I'm asking you to do, and what I guess Ford asked you to do as well, is to not approve this. We don't need 4 more houses on that short one opening street where they're already the houses that Brad mentioned and all these, you know, this is just, you know, you put students there, you know, they've got 2 cars, 3 cars, whatever, and we've got plenty of that on that street. And I will promise you, I live there, and people come up and down that street all the time, lickety-split. You know, I could do something about that if I wanted to, but I'm not willing to go and call the police and say, would you please slow the traffic down? These people are neighbors. But in any event, I would appreciate your consideration of what my thoughts are about this. And, you know, whatever you do, obviously, you know, we're not going to be, the neighbors are not going to be mad at Betty Jane Gary or any of that family for what they're doing. They're doing what they think is right. Fine, good. We're doing what we think is right. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Duke. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Lindy Gary Graham. I'm the middle child of Betty Jane Gary and Knox Gary. I didn't get my letter uploaded quick enough, so I'm just going to read it out loud. After the planning meeting I attended, I discovered that there were a lot of assumptions and misinformation disseminated that I'd like to clear up. My mom and dad bought the land on Lincoln and Buchanan in 1974. My mother always told me there were 3 houses for sale back then. Throughout their lives, they exhibited and taught us civic pride, valued the historic Oxford, and as time has moved on, my family has grown to love Oxford and this neighborhood. My family has a connection to Oxford, as many of you do. It's very insulting to me and my family that our plan is assumed to negatively affect the neighborhood. Many of you did not know that I taught middle school for over 30 years. One characteristic I always pride myself in is kindness and fairness to all. I taught every child that came to my classroom door equally, and they always excelled. This is one of many examples of my dedication to my community. I also serve as a volunteer member of the Garden Club, the University Alumni Association. I serve as the president of the House Board Corporation for one of the sororities on campus. I enjoy volunteering for breast cancer awareness, efforts in the community. I support the University Museum and contribute towards providing a comfortable, safe home for students on campus. As someone who loves Oxford and continues to do so, I hope you will hear my appeal today. I do not feel the neighbors have treated my family with kindness or fairness. Only one neighbor in 18 months of the planning stages has reached out to us with concerns. Others have chosen to disseminate incorrect and hateful information that is not true. Our intentions have always been to work with the city guidelines that were approved by the alderman. We have followed every proper procedure, worked with the city engineer and our own engineer. We have been approved by the tree board, and I will work with the Historic District Commission for home aesthetics. We also recognize that landowners are responsible to their neighbors. One neighbor stated we have a social contract with the elderly to honor the elderly, children should prosper, and neighbors should have a cohesive value. My Geary family has always valued the neighborhood. Children have played and prospered on our properties. I will not negatively affect the neighborhood by building a home on a legal-sized lot. If you drive down many streets around Lincoln, you will see changes that have been approved. Houses have been added on, driveways have disappeared, large and small houses have been built as well. Good for them. Even my own grandmother's home was knocked down many years ago for the landowners to build a swimming pool. Great, good for them. According to my neighbors, are these not improvements that negatively affected the neighborhood? Were they not keeping with the neighborhood? But my family, who has been a part of Oxford community and this neighborhood for more than 50 years, somehow all of a sudden has become the family that's going to negatively affect the neighborhood. This is so disappointing and disrespectful to the kind of people we are. My mother saw my preliminary house plan and loved it. She knew the lot size I wanted to build on. South Lamar Historic District has protection and legal ordinances and codes with engineer, lawyers, and my family have all adhered to. With harmonious intent, my sister and I sent a letter 18 months ago to the neighbors. This was not required. We were just trying to contact them and be considerate and polite. The letter stated that my sister and I planned to build, and our neighbors just assumed it was 2 homes. Mr. Charles Owens did email me and spoke with me. However, he remembers that conversation differently than I do. It has never been our intention to build 2 homes. Our neighbors did not reach out to ask questions directly, resulting in the spread of information. We are not going to build condos or townhouses. In reference to the city engineer and water drainage, which Brad has already talked about, they've worked on that. They asked about a 42-inch pipe. We said we'd build it. Then they changed their minds. All future homes, we agreed that are going to be on conventional foundations because that would help the drainage, according to the engineers. I'm leaving the drainage to the experts. The latest house built on Lincoln next to our property is the Simmons. Was it not keeping in the charm and the flavor of Oxford? Was it not harmonious? Or it wouldn't have gotten approved. So with respect to our family, including 7 grandchildren, soon to be 3 great-grandchildren, my late mother and father have connected to Oxford for a very long time, have contributed to the community with civic pride, enhanced livability in the area. Of course, we would only continue to be compatible and harmonious with the other properties in the general neighborhood. This is my parents' legacy to their family. It's very hurtful and sad that I have to prove myself to build a home in my own neighborhood that I've been a part of for 50 years. I can only feel embarrassed that I have believed more in my neighbors and had expectations that they would show my family kindness like we have over the years. I would appreciate all the consideration for case 3056 and ask you to approve 4 lots. And if you have any questions of me, I will be happy to answer them. Anybody have questions? No. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, is there anything new that anyone would like to add? Yes.
Good evening. My name is Parks Graham. I'm the youngest son of Lindy Graham, who just spoke. My brother Kyle and I each emailed all of you letters over the weekend. Good. This is a letter that was written by my eldest brother, Knox. He wasn't able to get it to you guys in time, so I'm going to read it in his stead. Good evening. I'm writing in support of the passage of the final plat amendment for case number 3056 before the board for property located at 911 Lincoln Avenue. I'm a beneficiary of the Gary Trust and son to Mary Lindy Graham. There's no doubt that careful planning, oversight, and care for such changes to a historic neighborhood need to be present, and I commend the Planning Commission's role to the city in that regard over the years. They've been very successful in their overall mission to date in accomplishing that. Whether it is water drainage, tree preservation, or adherence to the overall harmonious aesthetic of the neighborhood, all of that is very important. You will not find a single member of the Gary family or the trust, you will not find a single family member or Gary Trust beneficiary who would disagree with that. When my late grandmother, Betty Jane Gary, and her husband, Knox Gary Graham, purchased their home in 1974 at the end of Buchanan Avenue and subsequent surrounding land that is the source of the agenda item today, Oxford had not become the Oxford as we know it today. Yet over the decades, Mrs. Gary took exquisite care of her home and yard, even though at the time it wasn't mandated by any commission. She kept things exactly the way they were for 50 years at her own expense, choosing not to benefit herself but the neighbors who enjoyed freely playing in the empty lots. All the while, many of her neighbors who were beneficiaries of her graciousness for decades pushed forward with their every desire for their own homes and lots. And those wishes were deemed harmonious to the neighborhood by the commission, and rightfully so in many cases. But now that the shoe is on the other foot, those who are more than happy to be on the benefiting and receiving end of the Gary graciousness in the neighborhood have suddenly gone mute or taken to intentional disinformation to try and control these freely bestowed benefits from the Gary family. I, too, would have loved to live beside a private park and forest for more than 50 years while someone else kept up the maintenance, paid the increasing taxes, and encouraged my kids to play there and invited my family onto it. I just don't think that I would go out of my way to besmirch that family upon the benefactor's death to grasp perceived control, but sadly, here we are. The fact that the family who has done more to preserve the historic and harmonious aesthetic of the neighborhood for more than 5 decades is now being obstructed on something as simple as lot size changes, some neighbors going as far as pulling up survey markers after they'd been paid to be marked, is offensive and greatly saddening. There are no devious plans, no multi-home structures, no unharmonious architecture, or anything of the like planned for any of the subsequent lots. My mother, Lindy Graham, who is a retired Oxford school teacher and widow, was Mrs. Gary's caretaker in recent years. Only wishes to build herself a single-family home that would fit in perfectly with the others in the neighborhood. This would obviously require clear approval with the Historic Preservation Commission in every facet, and the family has no issue with this. Whether it's been an engineering study, water study, tree survey, or any of the other requirements that have already been completed at Mrs. Graham's and the family's own expense, there's nothing in the facts as they are written by the Planning Commission or the city that would delay the approval of this measure. None of the Planning Commission members asked any questions of my mother at the meeting, yet when the vote came, it was said that there were too many questions surrounding the project for it to be approved. They never had any intention of learning more on the project or giving it a fair shake. Instead, they hastily voted it down at the behest of the neighborhood, who mistakenly thinks they stand to continue freely benefit. Excuse me. Instead, they hastily voted it down at the behest of the neighborhood, who mistakenly thinks they stand to continue to freely benefit from 5 decades of generosity. 1 Timothy 5:3 says, "Give proper care to those widows who are really in need." There's no reason on paper not to approve this plat request. Zero. Many more complex issues than this benign plat request to the city are passed quickly on the board's agenda each month. Continuing the project approval process is an unnecessary waste of time and resources for both the city and the family, which will only compound exponentially for both if denied or kicked back down to the Planning Commission. The frustrating part of all of this is both sides of the argument want the exact same thing for the neighborhood. We are all on the same team for our hopes and wishes on Lincoln Avenue. I ask for your approval for this simple plat request, and let's move on with our lives. Thank you.
All right, board, is there anything that y'all have a question about?
Yeah. Jeff, I got a quick question. I haven't got the answer complete yet, but so they're asking for 4 lots, but none of the acreage has been subdivided whatsoever. So how can we end up with 4 lots when, in my mind, it should be 5? I mean, you've got it, the back lot has to be something here.
That was discussed at some of the preliminary meetings, and Brad was concerned about placing that as a lot in a subdivision. If you look at the historical breakdown of that lot, those were at least 2 individual lots fronting Lincoln at some point in time. It's listed under one ownership right now, so we were asked to put it in as an additional lot. There's a provision in the code that allows us to put it as future development, and that kind of got dismissed at some point in time when there was discussion whether it was 3 fronting Lincoln or 4 fronting Lincoln.
If I could also, there's a fairly recent DeSoto County case that said that if we were to not do anything you can right now and come back to you guys in the future for subdivision revision, that every property owner around it would have a property interest in that, and we could only do it with their consent. So what I asked planning to do was, I said, well, fine, do that as long as you give me some, what I suggested was we just do it as a phase 2. And then it might sit out there forever, guys. That's kind of what I had hoped before all of this started. That it might sit out there, and I could see my daughter. I could have my daughter's reception as I had mine. 32 years.
So this is, I'm just looking at it on the legal side and subdividing things in my lifetime. You're taking 1 lot. You're breaking off 4 pieces. Every subdivision, every subdivided lot that I've looked at, there's got to be something with this piece over here.
Phase 2. I think legally the way you do it is you designate it as a future phase, and then you may never do anything with it, or you may do something with it.
Isn't it attached to the home? Isn't it all 1 lot from the home all the way to 11th? That's 1 lot, and then the second of Lincoln would be divided with a lot line, and then Lincoln would be subdivided into 4 lots under this proposal.
Lincoln juts
Under
out
this proposal.
Lincoln juts out kind of like an RV that has one of those expansion things. That's how it juts out.
Right, but I just look at it on the legal side. In my mind, Y'all can say, I mean, you can go where you want to. That's why I asked Jeff to come up.
So I could go back, I think, and prove that even though it's under one name, I think I could go back and look at the records and show that the property on Lincoln was originally individual lots. We found monumentation of that to the case. Now, I'm not saying that it meets the code now because it's under one name, but that would be my argument if it come down to making that a lot. Because if you make that a lot in a subdivision, like Brad said, and you decide to develop it, well, number one, it's a lot in the subdivision, the taxes change. Number two, you have to go in and amend it. And like Brad says, you got to get all these signatures, and you got to go through 45-day review process to do that. So
I got all that. I just.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll tell you this, I'm not concerned with stormwater. Because I have faith in Jeff Williams. I know his work. I have faith in our city officials, particularly those who deal with stormwater, to handle it and not pass anything until it does its job. I'm not concerned with what's going on the lots, because we have a Historic Preservation Commission that can handle and make sure that it is complied with. This is under traditional suburban residential, which allows for what we're dealing with here is 4 lots at the bare minimum, and of 71 feet and change per lot. So it'd be 4 lots on approximately 286 feet of frontage. And that's under traditional suburban residential. But you have to also consider what has been adopted and has been a conservation overlay, providing that any new development and I think the terminology used is compatible with, let me find it so I don't misquote it, is any new development is compatible with the existing identity and overall character of the community. Now, you've got houses that are 56, lots that are 56, those predate this code. You've got the Rosser lot, which is now 1 lot, it was 2, that predates this code. My concern is the overlay basically provides, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And that's my concern here is, yes, you meet the bare minimum of the suburban, the TSR, you meet that for frontage, but the overlay, I'm concerned that it's not, that the 70-foot or the bare minimum is not compatible with the overall identity and character of this neighborhood. That's my concern. That's my comment.
All right, are there any other comments or questions from the board? All right, if not, then I need a motion to approve or deny the request.
I'll make a motion to deny the request.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is consider a request for approval of final quantity change order number 1 in the amount of $4,343 for the Rivers Hill Booster Pump Project. John?
This is simply a final quantity change order. That project is pretty much complete.
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Consider a request to activate the Thacker Road Sidewalk Project and authorize the mayor to sign the memorandum of agreement. John?
We've received approval to extend the sidewalk from Garden Terrace Drive north to Howell Loop, the gas station that's there at the intersection. MDOT's share would be roughly $369,000, I think.
We're excited to get this done. Do we have a motion?
Motion made.
All in favor? Any opposed? Consider request for extended work hours for the Oxford Square Stormwater Detention Project.
So we did this for the Jackson Streetscape project that we did a couple of summers ago. We're essentially asking for the same work hours as we do this big project over here behind City Grocery to allow us to complete it within a summer's time and not hopefully go into football season.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed?
I was gonna,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
I just had one question about the Friday quitting at 7. Is that because of the restaurants in the area?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
We've got everybody's email during the work session. We're gonna work with everybody around.
Yes,
I
sir.
know you will.
We've got some residences up there also.
Okay.
They've been in touch with them since our last planning session.
Okay.
Consider a supplemental agreement to contract for the West Jackson Avenue pedestrian signals.
It's come to light as part of the design for that project, since we've kind of been in it for a while, that there might be some possible issues with some of the communications equipment that's been spec'd. So this supplemental agreement just changes out some of the wiring in the project to hopefully eliminate that potential problem.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Consider a task order for program development and support services with Wagner Engineering, Inc. Bart?
This is under their ongoing general services agreement. Several things that we're currently working on are the funding for the water authorization, the direct appropriation for the West Jackson Avenue planning portion of that project, and then ongoing money that we're already getting from the federal government, including the ones that, that we were just made aware of a couple of weeks ago, the $2 million for the Piggies Road, the Commonwealth Connector, the technology portion, the technology grant for the police department.
All right, may I have any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? I ask the board to now consider an executive session.
Motion made to consider executive session.
All in favor? Any opposed? The board will now consider an executive session.